Hi there. How would one determine that it's reservoir depletion versus a straight-up breach? And would you possibly extend this 48-hour testing period? In the beginning, we've talked about how that might go longer.
Well, to answer your second question first, I think everything moving forward now will be condition-based. What it is we know, what we see, and how we interpret that. And in fact, you've centered in on the discussion that's been very critical over the last 24 hours, and that's what are the best ways that we can measure well depletion. And there are a lot of things that could impact on well depletion pressures. One of them is whether or not there's an aquifer associated with the reservoir itself where the water would be underneath it and be pushing that up. In this case, there's not an aquifer there. So what we're doing is we're going through and we're ruling out things that give us what we would call a false positive, would lead us to believe there's a cause for something that didn't exist. And as long as we have indications there is no leakage, and that is supported by seismic, acoustic, and other methods, including visual, we feel comfortable extending the period out as we move forward and try to understand more. Next question.
Your next question is from Ann Thompson with NBC News.
Hi, Admiral Allen. Thank you very much for taking my question. My question is this. How concerned are you that there is a leak, that doing this test is making things worse, given the fact that you're hovering around the 6,700 PSI and have been for quite some time now?
Well, and there are plausible reasons why we could be at 6,700 and there could be nothing wrong with the well. Depletion of the reservoir is one of those. Since we have no indication that there's been a breach on the seafloor, and we're continuing to monitor that. In fact, we're redoubling our efforts to monitor that, because if we're going to see how the well behaves moving forward as the pressure slowly rises, we need to have every assurance that we could react very quickly if we were to detect a leak. And that's one of the things that we've been talking about, and those are the conditions that we have placed on BP as we move forward to do this the surveillance. Obviously, this is a trade-off. It's a very, very good thing that the well is shut in right now. There's no oil being released in the environment, but we're very, very mindful to do no harm or do nothing that will be irreversible in terms of damage to the wellbore. And I would remind everybody that the purpose of the cap and where we're going has always been containment, and the final solution was going to be the relief well. So we shouldn't get so wrapped up in our ability to shut in the well that we compromise our ability ultimately to have the relief well be successful, and that's the reason we're being so measured moving forward. Was that responsive?
Yes, Admiral Allen. Thank you very much.
Okay. Next question.
Your next question is from Curtis Morgan with the Miami Herald.
Admiral, you just talked about the ability to quickly respond. Can you give us some idea of how quickly that would happen if you begin to see stuff coming up from the seafloor? Sure.
A scenario would be, a couple of scenarios would be if we were to detect, let's say, methane gas or some kind of a leakage of hydrocarbons from the seafloor. What you want to do is immediately lower the pressure in the wellbore that might be forcing the oil out. You could do that immediately by venting the choke and kill lines on the capping stack that was placed on there. And you could also bring up the Q4000 and the Helix producer to actually start producing oil. All of that would drive it back down to the pressure that we had before we started the capping exercise. And all of those would be solutions to reduce the pressure should we have to do that.
Is that a matter of minutes or hours? I mean, once something is coming up at the seafloor, isn't the damage already done? And is there a calculation of how quickly you would have to react to keep the damage from being worse? I mean, I just don't have a time frame idea here.
Well, that's an excellent question. One of the discussions we've had, and as you can imagine, this is enormously complex. One of the discussions we've had is whether or not this type of formation can self-heal itself. And when we say self-heal itself, is it the type of formation with mud and rock and so forth that when the source is stopped, it basically collapses back on itself and seals it up? We believe that is the type of formation that we're dealing with here. The quickest way to do this, and this would be within a matter of hours or sooner, would be just to merely open the valves for the kill and the choke line and release the oil into the environment at that point. That would then be followed on. It would take several hours to bring the Q4000 and the Helix producer online, but we could immediately significantly reduce the pressure just by managing the kill and the choke lines.
Thank you.
Your next question is from Jaquita White with the Time-Picayune.
Hi, Admiral, and thanks for taking questions. When does the current 6-hour period end, and how long before you will have results from that NOAA vessel and the other instruments you're bringing on scene to look for methane gas and other anomalies?
We virtually just came out of the science meeting that basically laid down the parameters for the next period of time, and I called Bob Dudley from BP and passed on our requirements probably 2 minutes before I went into this conference. So as I'm having the news conference, those orders are being translated down regarding the increased seismic surveillance and bringing the NOAA ship in, which is in the area, by the way. It's only several miles away. The issue with the NOAA ship is going to be deconflicting the sonar frequency so they can effectively do their job and detect methane if it's coming up from the bottom. The meeting basically started around 2. I would say approximately around 8, but we're saying 6-hour segments. But sometimes we get into a conversation that has to end. So I would say the 6 hours is a target and 8 would be a target. Not hard and fast, but that's what we're trying to do.
And the results from the NOAA ship and the other.
Yeah, we're trying to get that done in the next few hours so we can evaluate that in the next 6-hour interval. That's absolutely correct.
Okay.
Your next question is from Cassia Klemesinska with Bloomberg News.
Hi, thanks a lot for taking my question. Could you please specify what's the earliest day and time when oil may again be released?
That's difficult to say. I'm assuming when we would open the valves and release oil into the environment. The reason we would do that is if we felt that we could not learn anything more by the current well integrity test, that we had some indication that there was leakage and the current situation was actually worsening the condition in the well bore, or we had gotten to a point where we thought it was advisable to be able to shift to the full production capacity that we intended to have online by the end of July of 80,000 barrels. At this point, I would say that's conditions-based, and we'll evaluate that on a day-to-day basis. That's exactly what we're doing right now. The well is shut in, but if there's any indication that there's a problem moving forward, we will, first of all, vent the oil and then move to production, and then we'll try to produce as much as we can to limit the amount of oil that's going into the environment.
Thank you.
Your next question is from Kristen Hayes with Reuters.
Hello, Admiral. When you discussed this a couple days ago in Houston, you gave some parameters on the kind of pressures you want to see, and you said 8 to 9,000. If it could be, psi, if that could be sustained, that would be a really good sign. But anything below 6,000 psi could be an indication of a problem. Are you going to? Is 48 hours the absolute cutoff for this test, whether or not it reaches 9,000, even if it's lower than that?
I would say, based on some of the positive aspects we've seen, especially the curve up to 6,700 psi generally matches the type of curve in terms of the initial steepness and how it levels off and slowly rises, what you would expect of a well that has integrity that's being shut in. So there are certain parameters that would lead you to believe that the well has integrity. It's the overall pressure that we got to that is the source of the question. So I think we're shifting to what I would call a conditions-based process moving forward, 6 hours at a time, acquire information, evaluate, consult, make decisions, and move forward. So I think we're probably in a period, we're already eclipsing the 24-hour period that we had talked about for pressures in and around 6 to 7,000 psi. But the reason we're continuing is there are positive indicators regarding how the pressure rose that would match a well that had integrity that was being shut in. So what we're doing is we're very closely monitoring, make sure there are no leaks. We're doing seismic tests and acoustic tests, and we're kind of taking this one step at a time.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Operator, at this time, we'll take one more question.
Okay, your final question is from Colleen Long with the Associated Press.